Dear students, I welcome you all to the 18th session of Histology, Animal Behavior and Applied Zoology paper prescribed by the Mangalore University for 4th semester BSc Zoology. In this session, we shall study about the second part of animal migration, in which we are going to focus on migration in birds and its type and patterns. By definition, the word migration has come from the Latin word migrare, which means going from one place to another place. Many birds have the inherent quality to move from one place to another to obtain the advantages of favorable conditions. The favorable condition may be availability of food, security from predators, etc. In birds, migration means two-way journeys. Onward journey from the home to the new places, and back journey from their new places to the home. This movement occurs during the particular period of the year, and the birds usually follow the same route. There is a sort of internal biological clock which regulates the phenomenon of migration. According to L. Thompson, bird migration may be described as changes of habitat, periodically recurring and alternating in direction, which tend to secure optimum environmental condition at all times. Bird migration is a more or less regular, extensive movements between their breeding regions and their wintering regions. So what are all the types of birds migration? How bird migration is classified? So bird migration can be classified in various ways based on their pathways, their patterns, their modes in time, etc. But all birds do not migrate. But all species of birds are subject to periodical movements of varying extent. They may migrate from one place to another place for various reasons. The birds which live in northern part of the hemisphere have greatest migratory power. So in the coming slides we have certain examples of wonderful birds which have amazing ability of migrating thousands and thousands of kilometers without eating anything, without drinking anything, simply fly, fly and fly. So one category of such migration is latitudinal migration. The latitudinal migration usually means the movement of birds from north hemisphere to the south and vice versa. That means their home is in the north, so they migrate from north pole to the south pole, or vice versa. Their home may be at the south pole, they are now migrating to the north. Most birds live in the land masses of northern hemisphere in subarctic zones, where they get facilities for nesting and feeding during the summer. They move towards the south during winter, where they cannot survive. An opposite but lesser movement also occurs in the southern hemisphere when the seasons are changed. Cuckoo breeds in India spends the summer at Southeast Africa and thus cover a distance of about 7,250 kilometers. Please look at the distance covered by the steny birds, 7,250 kilometers. Some tropical birds migrate during rainy seasons to the outer tropics to breed and return to the central tropics in dry season. Many marine birds also make considerable migrations. Let us look into the examples of this migration. Puffins, the birds which you can see here, small birds, okay, with a large beak. So the great shearwater puffins breeds on small islands and migrates as far as Greenland in May and returns after a few months. It covers a distance of around 1,300 kilometers. Penguins migrate by swimming and cover a considerable distance of few hundred miles. You can see here large flocks of the penguins migrating from one place to another place. They migrate by swimming. And the champion of migration has come here, Sterna paradisea. It's also called as Arctic tern, breeds in the northern temperate regions and migrates to the Antarctic zone along the Atlantic. So it is observed that the Sterna covers a distance of 22,500 kilometers during the migration. Just look at the distance covered by this tiny bird. That too along the Atlantic Ocean. It has to swim along the Atlantic Ocean without taking rest, because there is nothing to take rest over the surface of the ocean. They have to migrate, migrate, and migrate, fly, fly, and fly. And they cover a distance of 22,500 kilometers during migration, which is simply superb and amazing behavior. So the other kind of migration is longitudinal migration. Longitudinal migration can be defined as the migration of birds from east to west or west to east. Some birds, which you can see here, called starlings, a resident of East Europe and West Asia, migrate towards the Atlantic coast, as well as California gulls, a resident who breeds in Utah, and migrate westward to winter in the Pacific coast. Altitudinal migrations. Altitudinal migrations means the migrations occur in the mountain regions. So the migration takes place along the different altitudes. In winter, the birds residing in the higher altitudes, mountain regions, generally, fly towards the base of the mountains where the temperature will be, where the condition will be a little warmer, and they migrate back to the higher altitudes from where they have come during summer season. Many birds inhabiting the mountain peaks migrate to lowlands during winter. Golden plover, for an example, starts from an Arctic tundra and goes up to the plains of Argentina, covering a distance of around 11,250 kilometers. So you can see here, this is a small bird. Okay, small bird, starts moving towards Argentina from these, see here, these are the regions where they are now surviving, and they migrate towards Argentina, and then they go back, covering a distance of around 11,000 kilometers. Birds migrate either in flocks or in pairs. Swallows and storks migrate a distance of around 9,650 kilometers from northern Europe to the South Africa. Ruff breeds. Ruff is a bird, okay? Ruff breeds in Siberia and travels to Great Britain, Africa, India, and Ceylon, thus traveling a distance of around 9,650 kilometers again. And a common bird of India called Indian pitta, a small bird. In Kannada it is called pancharangi. Okay, a small bird that has the ability to migrate from the Himalayan ranges to the lowland plains of India. In winter, it simply migrates to the lowlands, and also they migrate to the plains of Karnataka as well. So you can see these birds during winter in Karnataka, and when the summer approaches, they simply go back to their homelands. Okay, you can see here, this is the photograph of Indian pitta, which is actually the inhabitants of these Himalayan ranges. Okay, will simply start migrating towards the southern regions during the winter. You can see here the concentration of this bird is high in Western Ghats, so they simply migrate from these places towards the Western Ghats during winter seasons. Some other categories of bird migration are partial migration. That means all members of a group of birds do not take part in migration. Only a bunch of individuals in a population move from one place to another place. So only several members of the group take part in migration. Blue jays, for an example, you can see here this one, okay, of Canada and northern part of the United States, travel southwards to blend with the sedentary populations of southern states of USA. So there are two kinds of populations, sedentary and migratory. Both belong to the same species. A part of the population migrates from one place to another place. Coots and spoonbills. The spoonbill is seen here, okay, of our country may be example of partial migration. Okay, these are the birds which are residing in our country too. A part of their population move from one place to another place, and such a migration is called partial migration. So another kind of bird migration is vagrant or irregular migration. So there is no regularity for this. When some of the birds disperse to a short or long distance for safety and food, it is called vagrant or irregular migration. There is no specific pathway for that, there is no migratory route for that, simply they move from one place to another place. Herons may be the example of vagrant migration, so this bird is the heron. And another example is the blackstock, this one. And then glossy ibis, spotted eagle, beaters are other examples of birds exhibiting irregular migration. Well, a very common example, the crow is well known for its ability of daily migration. Some birds make daily journey from their nests by the influence of environmental factors such as temperature, light, and humidity. Examples are crows, herons, and starlings. So their nesting place will be somewhere. From that place they migrate to other place for various reasons. They may have to find food and other things. They may be suffering from the high temperature, their light or humidity, whatever it may be. So these birds exhibit a special kind of migration called daily migration. Well, if the migration is dependent on the seasons, then we call it a seasonal migration. Some birds migrate at different seasons of the year for food or breeding. Example, cuckoos, swifts, and swallows. They migrate from south to north during summer. These birds are called summer visitors. Again, there are some birds like snow bunting. This is the photograph of snow bunting, redwing, shorelark, grey plover, etc., which migrate from north to south during winter. They are called winter visitors. So based on their habit of visiting, if they visit in summer, they are called summer visitors. If they visit in winter, they are called winter visitors. Well, if the migration is dependent upon the sunlight, okay, a migration is called diurnal if the birds migrate during day. Many larger birds like crows, robins, swallows, hawks, jays, bluebirds, pelicans, cranes, geese, etc. migrate during the daytime for food. These birds are called diurnal birds and generally migrate in flocks. There are a large number of birds will be there. They migrate from one place to another place. Some birds are nocturnal migrants, such as the passerine group birds, sparrows, warblers, etc. They migrate. So you can see here the sparrows and the warblers. They migrate in darkness. They generally prefer migration in darkness in order to avoid the predatory birds and other large birds. So this is the photograph of a swallow, which exhibits diurnal migration. So after looking into the types of migration, let us now look into the patterns of migration. So this bird migration is extensively studied kind of animal migration. Okay, various methodologies involved, various types involved, and the bird migration is one of the wonders of life. The migratory birds usually follow definite lines of flight. The route followed by them may be the same while going and returning back, or may be different. So they may use the same pathway, same route for both to and fro journey, or sometimes they may use some other different pathways. But most of the times the routes are common. The nocturnal small birds migrate with the general airflow. In spring it takes place from south to north along warm air currents, and in autumn from north to south with the cool wind of north. Change in their course occurs due to configuration of land, coastline, path of great rivers and intervening mountain ranges. So these are all the factors that influence the route and patterns of their migration. But still, they may use different routes to migrate from one place to another place. So there are sea routes, coastal routes, river valley routes, and mountain ranges routes. Sea routes are usually preferred by marine birds, along with some land birds are known to cross as much as 400 miles of ocean in a stroke. But if there are intermediate islands, the distance covered may be more as well. Certain birds have been seen crossing the Atlantic Ocean between Azores and Portugal, around 900 miles, and the ocean between the continents of North America and Bermuda, etc. So, if the birds they want to follow the sea route, then they may have to migrate a huge distance of around 400 miles to 900 miles or more. Some birds may prefer coastal routes. The coastal routes afford migration for large number of migrants. Certain important migratory coastal routes are East Atlantic coastline, West Atlantic coastline, East Pacific and West Pacific coastline, East Indies coastline and West Indies coastline. See, the reason why the birds generally prefer migrating through this coastal line is they may get some food there, they may get some places to reside and halt there, they may get some place to rest there. This is quite interesting and important route of migration. Some birds may prefer river valley routes while migrating from plains to hills and hills to plains. So during such conditions, the migratory birds cross rivers and river valleys falling in the way. Sometimes, very rarely, the birds crosses mountain ranges. The river valleys, mountain ranges and coastal routes provide good landmarks for the migrating birds, which enable the birds to recognize and remember the routes and entrances of the countries. Deviations in the path sometimes occur due to configuration of land, coastline, course of great rivers and intervening mountain chains. So sometimes their routes are also influenced by the some configuration of lands, coastline, course of great rivers, etc. But once the birds are ready for migration, they have to prepare for migration. So a lot of requirements for a bird when it is migrating. It is supposed to take care of the energy needs and many other needs. So a lot of requirements are there. The very first requirement is a fat deposition. The migratory birds become greedy and fat. That means they eat lot of food when their migratory season or migration time is approaching. And a lot of fat is deposited in the subcutaneous region of the body. The fat deposition plays an important role in the migration of birds. Birds those migrate a long distance reserve enough fat which provides energy in their arduous journey and helps the birds to reach its destination following a particular route. After fat deposition, restlessness is seen among the birds for migration. In all migratory birds, accumulation of fat takes place for extra fuel during prolonged flight and migration. So, as we all know that the subcutaneous fat acts as a reserve food for migrating birds. So, if they want to migrate from one place to another place, then they have to fly long distances without rest and taking food. So, in such conditions, these birds need continuous supply of constant supply of energy, which will be, which is supposed to be offered by the subcutaneous fat. So once the fat is deposited, these birds become restless. If they are kept in cages, then they become restless. Then always they will be trying to fly towards the routes of their migration. But along with the fat migration, they get a lot of instincts. That means they have some inborn, signals, cues for migration. Birds that take part in migration or follow a more or less definite goal evidently possess an inherited instinct. Both the direction and goal must have been implanted in the bird's genetic code when a population can adjust to a particular location or environment. The experienced folk, that means the birds which have migrated in the previous years, will guide the birds that are supposed to take the migration this year. This theory of experience leading the folk is sometimes advanced, that old and experienced birds lead the way and thereby lead the whole route and show the whole route to the younger generation. This theory may be applicable to some birds like swans, geese and cranes because they fly in flocks, but not applicable in all species where old and young birds migrate at different times and mainly young start ahead of the adult. So the theory of experience leading leading the group, though it looks handy in many birds, the younger generation generally start the migration before the adults starting the or the old one starting the migrations. This is all about introduction, types and patterns of migration as well as preparations for the migration. For any any further information about bird migration could be you know sought by referring these textbooks, which are readily available in most of the libraries of our government colleges. Thank you.